when a family conversation starts, it's the person that you thought wasn't interested is interested, so everybody needs to be involved in it. The kids that are away working in the faraway city or in a far off land, everybody needs to be included, because the last thing you want to do is create a row within the family. And if the contents of a will are unexpected, you're definitely going to have a family row. So it's much better to do it while everybody is alive.
As the preparations for Christmas continue in earnest, I hope you're all enjoying the festive season with friends and family. If you're anything like me, choosing the perfect present for your loved ones is important, but knowing where to start can sometimes be challenging. In much the same way, passing on the family farm to the next generation can feel daunting. You know it's something that needs to be done, but figuring out where to begin can be tricky. Over the next few weeks, we'll be exploring how best to approach this process on the farm and the key considerations to keep in mind when having these important discussions. You're listening to the latest episode of the Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. We'd really appreciate it if you could listen, follow, and leave us a review on Apple or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. Having all of the family around during Christmas creates a great opportunity to start those essential conversations about the future. Tackling the often sticky subject of farm succession can be difficult, but once it's addressed, it can lift a huge weight off everybody's shoulders. I'm delighted to be joined today by James McDonnell, a financial specialist with Teagasc, to discuss farm succession and how best to navigate the conversation that every farming family needs to have. James, I suppose at the starting point, there might be a lot of people home for Christmas around at the moment. A lot of family members there. It's often a really good time to maybe start this perhaps, difficult conversation. What are the first steps maybe somebody should take, or how do they even approach it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And when we run the Transfer and the Family Farm clinics, the first 2 weeks of October that we've been doing for the last 10 years, it's a common one. Farm family will come up to me at the event and they'll say, well, we're not sure if we have a successor or not. We're not sure how to bring up the topic. And the common answer I give is, they leave the clinic with the Teagasc booklet, a guide to transferring the family farm, and they bring that home and leave it on the kitchen table. And that might be a conversation starter using that prop.
So just in that one, James, just in that typical scenario where people are really not even sure if they have a successor or not, what do you mean by that? As in there's maybe people don't seem to overly interested, or they have jobs, or is it a combination of a whole heap of factors?
It's a combination of a whole heap of factors. People are living longer. So if you go back to 1980, farm succession nearly happened because somebody died, because the average age a person lived to back in 1980 was about 75. Now, in 2024, the average person is living to 85. So there's an extra 10 years so we're not into forced farm transfer as in a debt situation. It's taken 10 years longer. So then if you look at the successor, they're now possibly 10 years older and they're probably settled into a job, middle-aged. It's probably their kids might be the most likely, because somebody at 50 years of age that has 30 years work done, maybe like ourselves, Michael, in the public service, are you interested in going farming at this stage of your career if you were to now get handed the farm? So lots of people are in that.
Give me 300 acres, James. I might have a go at it, but that's not really going to happen either. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, if somebody gives me 300, I definitely have a go at it. So there's that. There's the family tradition. People want to keep the name on the farm. The children are better educated now than ever before. So they're educated to where they can get a good job, so a stable income and we're at full employment in Ireland, where the average wage is reasonably good. So do you want to give that up for an income that might be, very up and down, say?
But I suppose, James, that all being said, for every family, there's lots of smart people around every table, and everybody knows it's coming. It has to come at some stage or other. Even though the potential successor, or maybe, as you say, maybe it's the grandchild who's the successor in it, they all know it has to happen at some stage. So this conversation has to happen. So, it is a sensitive kind of topic, if you like. And is there a way that you have in terms of all the conversation, because you've done a lot of work on this, to try and encourage that conversation or to start that bit of communication?
I think the parents have to start the conversation themselves, and they need to get themselves to a place where they want to start it. So uh, people probably have been burying their head in the sand in lots of cases. I recently came across a case where I met a farmer. He was 62 years of age, had been farming his parents' land for the last 30 years, but it was still his parents' land. And his dad suddenly, at 92 years of age, wanted to transfer the farm. Suddenly there was a major rush on it. Why? Because there was a proposal put in the budget that the transferor needed to be active. Now that was postponed. And in this case, the transferor was not active, but the transferee was and had been farming his parents' land for over 30 years. And he said, I'm almost to the stage now where I don't want to receive the land from my dad because I want to give it to my son because I'm getting close to retirement age.
So, just in that scenario, in terms of the parents starting that conversation, does the parents, if you like, or the parent or parents need to have, or the landowners in that thing, need to have the answer to the question, or is it a conversation to actually figure out where it's going to go?
Yeah, they need to have a conversation as to where it needs to go. I was talking to a colleague recently, and she told me when she was 6 years of age, she knew that she was not getting the farm, that it was her older brother. It's never too soon to start the conversation. There's a man I met at 62 and hadn't received the land yet, even though he had been farming it for 30 years. And then there's a lady I met who is now, close to my age and knew from 6 years of age that she was not getting the farm. So it's never too early to start. And it's all about communication. Sometimes when a family conversation starts, it's the person that you thought wasn't interested is interested,
Hmm.
so everybody needs to be involved in it. The kids that are away working in the faraway city or in a far off land, everybody needs to be included because the last thing you want to do is create a row within the family. And if the contents of a will are unexpected, you're definitely going to have a family row. So it's much better to do it while everybody is alive.
So, talking about a will, going back to that, I was thinking about what you said about this 80 or sorry, 92-year-old man who was trying to hand over the farm. How important is it to have a will, in all of those circumstances?
Well, if we remember back to the Brexit negotiations and how long they took, they had a backstop agreement to cover the North of Ireland question. So a will becomes your backstop. So you write a will with the intended, and then you try to do the lifetime transfer. And if the unforeseen happens that you pass away in the process of doing the farm succession, well, then the will takes over. But you need to have the conversations because you want to have the will written correctly. Now, for the moment, you know, um, if we look at the research where people have been questioned, have you a will or have you not got a will? About 50% of the population that have property don't have a will. And of the 50% that do have wills, they probably haven't reviewed them in a while. So it's something that would need to be reviewed every 5 to 10 years or every time there's a change in the family circumstances. So there's a new person joins the family or somebody passes away within the family, your will would need to be adjusted. But that becomes the backstop. And then you go and you have your conversation. And within the family, timing is important. And it's much easier to get the timing correct when everybody is alive. Um, and there's a whole series of reasons for getting the timing right, mostly to do with tax. But if you run out of time, at least the will is there and your wishes will be carried out. And if you don't have a will, your estate is divided according to the Succession Act of 1965. So it depends on who's left behind you as to what share or proportion of the farm or your assets that they receive. And sometimes that makes things very complicated. I had a client one time when I worked in Limerick, and he owned 13/18ths of a farm. because of the Succession Act. And he was farming all of the farm, but it got very complicated when we were dealing with Department of Agriculture schemes at the time.
So, James, go back then in terms of that, family communication. You've talked to an awful lot of people along the way over the last, I don't, 10 years maybe around this. Are there any common challenges that farmers face when, around that discussion or on succession? And have you come across ways people have actually got past those, if you like?
Sometimes people don't know where to start, and maybe it's to do with their personality that they're shy or not confident. And, in lots of families now, the children are better educated and better able to express themselves than their parents. So you just might find the conversation tricky. Sometimes we meet a family who have, you know, they have had conversations, but things are about to go astray, and maybe there could be a row around the next corner. So a mediator can be a very important professional. So a mediator can do a number of things. They can help prevent the row. They can start the conversation, or if there is a major disagreement, they can help resolve it. So a mediator is the professional that you head to if there are issues around communication. And I suppose a lot of the initial conversations could be started with, the advisor. Farmer sits down with his Teagasc advisor or his private consultant, and they have a chat about, what's the future direction of the farm, how they want to step away, what family are interested, what education do the children have. Um, Maybe there's somebody showing a bit of interest, and if you're young, let's say you're 55 years of age and you have a child just out of ag college and they're ready to start going, well, and you're not ready to step away, how do you manage that one? So um, maybe registered farm partnership might be a route that both people can claim an income, and maybe it's a part-time farm. Like lots of farms are part-time, so the parents might be in a part-time job as well as the children. So how do you fit all of that together to make the farm work, continue it as a successful business, given the family dynamics and the situation in the family, and that farming is, it's a high, lots of farms require high investment, and tillage is one of those enterprises where there's lots of investment required. And who should make that? Is it the young person or is it the parents that are heading towards retirement? So we must remember that the family and the business are interlinked. There's not many people like I I work 20 miles, or I live 20 miles from my workplace, Michael. But farmers live on the doorstep of where they work. So trying to separate the family from the business is tricky. And it's about getting that all right. And farmhouses in the middle of the farmyard sometimes complicate that a little bit. And the only way to sort it all out really is through communication.
And talking about that, James, like, I mean, we're at Christmas now, and it's generally a great time for family and people are at home and that kind of thing. But not everybody necessarily is able to make it home, or maybe a lot of family members can't be there for as long as they would have liked. But how do you, or how do people go around trying to ensure that all family members are included in this conversation, and their voice is heard during the kind of the planning discussions? Because I presume we moved on a little bit. The Bull McCabe put the foot down, and everyone kind of listened, and that was the end of it. But things are very different today. So it's putting the foot down mightn't just be the way of going about it. How does the family make sure that there's that open communication? So when you get to the very end, as you say, there's no family falling out, there's no breakup or breakdown of relationships.
Well, I would say the world has gotten very small in terms of communication, Michael. And I've done Zoom calls with advisors who have clients sitting in their office, and sometimes the client might be at home in their own office, the advisor's in his office, and I'm in my office. I've spoken to clients or children of clients in Dubai and New Zealand and far off places using the video call. So if we can have conversations like that, there's no reason why family can't, do something similar. Now, not everybody is a techie, but I'm sure that parents in a family that mightn't be so good on the tech or might have a brick phone, that uh, another family member could set up a Zoom call or a video call or iPhone, a call where they can all communicate together. So I think the tech is favoring us. And I know every couple of years when there's a new incentive in CAP, the age profile of farmers comes down a couple of years, but it'll start creeping back up again. Like we're looking at the average age of a farmer in Ireland is between 57 and 60. And that hasn't really changed over the last 10 years. So I suppose people do need to think about, where they're going to go, what they're going to do, how they're going to pass on the family farm. Like there's family tradition, there's family dynamics, there's the increase in life expectancy, there's lower unpredictable income. Pensions become part of it. Lots of farm families don't have a private pension and are relying on the non-contributory pension. And then there's we have a complex taxation system. And then people are worried about the cost of nursing home. If somebody needs care and they can't be cared for at home because of a debilitating disease like dementia, the Fair Deal scheme is another tricky one. So,
okay, and we'll come back to that later because I think there's a bit of discussion around that I think we need as well. But just finishing off on the family bit, because I thought it was interesting that you talked about, people from Dubai or America can be on a call and have that kind of conversation. In terms of the people that you've been dealing with, have you seen good strategies where that conversation or that communication and as far as you were involved in it, that they managed to keep those relationships relatively strong?
Yeah, if everybody is included and there's a unanimous, everybody will all, individually, I will want more than you, Michael, if we were in competition with each other. And families are no different in terms of the competition between siblings. But if you get them all into a room and everybody lays their cards on the table, it is possible to negotiate, a solution. And bearing in mind that a parent doesn't have to give the farm until they're ready to give it. Once they give it, they can't take it back. So parents can have a certain level of control and to be sure that, that the transactions are fair. And fair doesn't always mean equal. If I want to divide my estate fairly between my two children, well, the fairest way is to sell it and divide the proceeds. But what's fair for one child mightn't be fair for the other child in monetary terms, but in reality, one child might want a house and another child might want the farm. And, both of them are educated, maybe they're happy at that. So, and farming sometimes can be a vocation, and the person you educate really well to get a good job might be better off. So fair isn't always equal, but the whole purpose behind the communication is to get a fair result for everybody, even though they might all end up with different assets in their pocket.
And surprisingly, actually, I was involved in a couple of conversations myself around this with various different people, and it's amazing when people start to talk, and people are, for the most part, are very reasonable. That when they talk, they kind of say, "Well, I'm not going to farm. I've no interest in farming. That's not something I want to do. But I do realize you can't divide the farm up in 6 or 7 different ways for the last person to make a living." So, people are often very happy with a different type of an outcome from that, as you say, whether it was the education or a small spot for a house or whatever it happens to be. But it's amazing how people are, at the end of the day, realistic and reasonable when the conversation starts.
I was looking at a case really recently where there's 3 people interested in receiving the farm. This is what the parent was telling me, and wondering how to do it. And I was kind of thinking, well, sure, the 3 children could take 3 different fields, but you could form a registered farm partnership where the farm is run together as one unit. So 3 names in the herd number, all the cows in that herd number, and they run the business together, but they're getting ownership of different parts. So they could continue working together. Now, that's probably fine for, the first generation, but when they all have children, then they're first cousins. So that's where it gets complicated. But like the job of the first parent is to divide the land fairly between their 3 children.
As they say, they can only give it away once. They can't keep thinking about every other generation thereafter.
Exactly.
We'll have to leave it there for this week, James, and there's certainly much more to cover on that topic. So many thanks to James for joining me on the show, and we'll have him back just after Christmas to discuss the fair deal, tax considerations, and how succession planning can be adapted during the process. So before we wrap up, I want to take this opportunity to wish you and your family a very happy and safe Christmas. Make sure to take a well-deserved break and enjoy this time with loved ones. A big thank you to all my guests throughout the year. There has been many along the way, and especially to farmers who took time to join the show and share their experiences. I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas, and I look forward to chatting to you again in the new year.